So multiple means of representation for me recognizes that students have a variety of different ways of learning styles. They may be visual learners or they may be text-based learners, and therefore providing information in a variety of different ways to address those different styles and interests and needs.
So, for example, I used my FM system, which helps me hear in the classroom, it helps me hear the professor or the teacher. But I reversed engineered that, and I used it for my students to help me hear what they were saying. And they had to take turns using the FM system, and I had to paraphrase what they were saying, but I didn't back down from that challenge. And so I think the lesson for me learning about the multiple means of representation was that there's different ways to get the message across, but you have to be willing to learn what the best methods are for each of those ways.
We work with faculty members to ensure that their PowerPoint slides are accessible, and we encourage faculty to mount those slides ahead of time. Again, that speaks to those principles of representation and engagement. If a student is able to access the material ahead of time, then they can convert it into some sort of format that's accessible to them. If the person is blind, maybe they would braille it, maybe they would use a screen reader to read it aloud. If a PowerPoint is just shown in class without the students being able to manipulate the PowerPoint ahead of time or see it ahead of time, if you were a blind individual in class or someone with low vision that can't read the PowerPoint from your seat in the classroom, then you're disengaged from that classroom environment. So we would provide supports with profs to encourage them to mount their course materials ahead of time, but also to ensure to make them accessible, and we give them the tools to do that.
I would like my colleagues to recognize that it's not rocket science, that many of them may already be implementing some of these principles in their everyday teaching, and that if we're more aware of how we teach and the need to develop more accessible environments, we become more prepared when specific experiences kind of arise in the classroom where students may not have self-declared requiring accommodation early on in the course, as much as we encourage them to do so, may come up later in the course for any number of reasons, whether it's about the student's comfort, whether it's the student's own self-awareness, whether it's waiting for the official papers to identify specifically what learning disability or disability that they have or that they're experiencing. So, for example, it could be being prepared so that if 3 weeks, 4 weeks before classes start, I learned that there's a student with a visual impairment in my class, that I have my readings ready for when the library calls me, and they will call me saying that, could you please provide us with your readings? We'd like to translate them into Braille for a student who has a visual impairment in your class. I may or may not know who that student with the visual impairment is because the student has not come forward to me yet, but what matters is that the university has the supports available to assist the instructor in making their classroom more accessible.